On the morning of October 13, 2018, 16-year-old Carly Gousset vanished from her home in Chalfont, California, a small rural community in Mono County. What began as a typical Friday night for a teenager would spiral into a perplexing mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Carly lived with her father, Zachary Gousset, stepmother Melissa Gousset, and two younger brothers in a quiet neighborhood. By all accounts, Carly was close with her family, particularly doting on her brothers. However, in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, friends reported that Carly had been experiencing episodes of paranoia, convinced someone was tracking her phone. On the evening of October 12th, Carly asked permission to attend her high school's football game. Her parents agreed, unaware that Carly actually planned to skip the game and attend a party with her boyfriend, Donald. This decision would set in motion a chain of events that culminated in Carly's disappearance. At the party, Carly smoked marijuana. Her reaction was severe and immediate. Donald Arrowood III, Carly's boyfriend, later told investigators that Carly became intensely paranoid, frightened by the music and even his presence. In a state of panic, Carly fled from Donald, running down the street in darkness. At 8:45 p.m., Carly called her stepmother, Melissa, frantically asking to be picked up. When Melissa arrived, she found Carly pale and disoriented, her pupils severely dilated. The short drive home did little to calm Carly's agitated state. She jumped between seats, expressing fear that the car would harm her. Once home, Carly's erratic behavior continued well into the night. Family members describe her alternating between huddling fearfully in corners and seeking comfort from her parents. She expressed a desire to read the Bible, paint her nails, and color, activities jarringly at odds with her apparent distress. At approximately 10 p.m., Melissa made the decision to secretly record Carly's behavior on her cell phone. Her intention was to show Carly the footage the next day as a cautionary lesson about substance use. These recordings would later become crucial evidence, providing insight into Carly's mental state in her final documented hours. In one 8-minute 45-second recording reviewed by Fox News, Carly's voice is described as shaky and filled with anguish. She expresses fear of sleeping and repeatedly apologizes. At one point, she asks if Melissa is going to call 911 and questions whether she'll live until tomorrow. Despite reassurances, Carly's paranoia persists, even leading her to voice a fear that Melissa might kill her. Throughout the night, Carly engaged in writing on what the family believes was a therapy homework sheet. This continued for hours, possibly as a self-soothing mechanism. Melissa stayed with Carly until after 3 a.m. when the teenager finally seemed to settle down. Melissa checked on Carly and her other children a few times before going to sleep herself. The next morning, between 7:15 and 7:30 a.m., Melissa awoke to find Carly gone. The front door was ajar, and Carly's cell phone was left behind on the kitchen island. Alarmed, Melissa woke Zachary, and the two immediately set out in their car to search for Carly. While driving, Zachary called Carly's biological mother, Lindsay Fairley, to inform her of the situation. He then contacted the Mono County Sheriff's Department to report Carly as missing. In the hours that followed, a few key witnesses came forward with potential sightings of Carly. Kenneth Dutton, a neighbor who knew Carly, reported seeing her walking through the neighborhood that Saturday morning. He specifically noted that she was carrying a piece of paper. Another neighbor, Richard Eddy, reported seeing a thin female with long hair walking past his house, also holding a piece of paper. He described her behavior as unusual, noting that she was looking up around at the sky. The final reported sighting came from a local resident described as a wooder, who claimed to have seen a girl matching Carly's description near Highway 6. This two-lane route runs toward Bishop, but also leads north into some of Nevada's most desolate desert areas, significantly expanding the potential search area. The piece of paper mentioned by multiple witnesses is of particular interest to investigators. It's speculated that this could be the same therapy homework sheet Carly had been writing on during her distressed state the night before. However, this paper has never been recovered, leaving its contents a mystery. Despite extensive searches of the area and numerous tips, no trace of Carly has ever been found. The investigation has been hampered by the vast, rugged terrain surrounding Chalfont and the lack of concrete evidence beyond the witness sightings. Sheriff Ingrid Braun of the Mono County Sheriff's Office has stated that her department remains open to all possibilities regarding Carly's disappearance. They have no prevailing theory about what happened to her, underscoring the perplexing nature of this case. The FBI has also become involved in the investigation, but despite their resources, no significant leads have emerged. The case has garnered national attention, featured on various true crime shows and podcasts, yet answers remain elusive. Carly's family continues to hold out hope for her return or for answers about her fate. They've maintained an active presence on social media, sharing updates and keeping Carly's story in the public eye. However, as years pass, the pain of not knowing what happened to Carly only deepens. The disappearance of Carly Gousset remains one of California's most baffling missing persons cases. The combination of her altered mental state prior to vanishing, the early morning departure, and the lack of physical evidence has created a mystery that continues to confound investigators and haunt her loved ones. As of 2024, more than 5 years after she went missing, Carly Gousset's case remains unsolved. The Mono County Sheriff's Office continues to seek information from the public, maintaining a dedicated tip line for any leads related to her disappearance. The search for Carly and for answers goes on, with investigators and family alike hoping that someday the truth about what happened on that October morning in 2018 will finally come to light. In the quiet town of Sturgis, Michigan, a young mother's disappearance would leave a community searching for answers and a family desperate for closure. This is the story of Brittany Nicole Shank, a 23-year-old woman who vanished on a foggy night in November 2018, leaving behind 4 children and a trail of questions. Brittany's life was marked by turbulence and change. At just 23, she had already been married multiple times and was the mother of 4 children, none of whom were in her direct custody at the time of her disappearance. Despite this, Brittany was actively working to remain a part of her children's lives while simultaneously battling for sobriety and seeking stable employment. In the years leading up to her disappearance, Brittany's life was characterized by frequent changes. She maintained multiple social media accounts, creating new ones with each significant life event. Her relationships were often tumultuous, with a history of dating men described as bad boys. Both of her known husbands had prior arrests for minor offenses related to bar fights or drug-related incidents. On November 30th, 2018, the day Brittany vanished, events took a strange turn. Earlier that day, she was seen in the company of an unidentified man in his early to mid-20s, described as 5'6" to 5'8", tall, with short blonde hair and mutton chop sideburns. The significance of this man's presence remains unclear to investigators. As night fell and a dense fog settled over Sturgis, Brittany borrowed her boyfriend's car. At approximately 9:30 p.m., while driving along the 33,000 block of Fawn River Road, Brittany's vehicle veered off the road in a single-car crash. What happened next would set in motion a series of events that continue to baffle investigators to this day. Witnesses reported seeing Brittany walking from house to house in the area immediately following the crash. She was described as confused and seeking help, notably without a coat or shoes despite the cold November night. Her feet appeared to be cut, likely from walking on broken glass from the accident or the rough gravel road. Cell phone records reveal that Brittany attempted to call both her grandmother and the police multiple times. However, due to poor reception in the area, none of these calls successfully connected. This crucial detail highlights the isolation Brittany faced in her moment of need. One resident who encountered Brittany that night provided a green army jacket to keep her warm. However, when he turned away briefly to call for help, Brittany inexplicably fled. This witness, like Brittany, struggled to get a cell signal, but eventually managed to reach 911. He reported to the police that Brittany had been acting erratically. The last confirmed sighting of Brittany Shank was on that foggy night, confused and seemingly disoriented, walking along Fawn River Road. From that point forward, Brittany vanished without a trace. The initial investigation faced several challenges. The poor weather conditions on the night of Brittany's disappearance hampered immediate search efforts. The fog that had contributed to her car accident also limited visibility for any potential witnesses or search parties. Investigators had to contend with Brittany's complex personal history. Her multiple relationships and frequent life changes made it difficult to compile a comprehensive list of individuals who might have information about her disappearance. Each new lead seemed to uncover more questions than answers. As the investigation progressed, law enforcement faced a web of conflicting information and numerous red herrings, as described by James Basinger, host of the Hide and Seek podcast. The sheer number of theories and potential suspects was unusual, even for a missing persons case. Investigators meticulously combed through Brittany's social media presence, including her multiple Facebook accounts. They interviewed friends, family members, and acquaintances, attempting to piece together Brittany's final days and hours. However, her tumultuous lifestyle and the frequent changes in her social circle made it challenging to establish a clear timeline or identify potential persons of interest. The case took an unexpected turn when it was revealed that Brittany had dyed her hair blue-black on the morning of her disappearance, contradicting initial reports of her having red hair with shaved sides. This discrepancy in her description added another layer of complexity to the search efforts. Brittany's mother, Jessica Rolfe, has been a tireless advocate for her daughter. In emotional pleas to the media, she has stated, "Brittany, I love you, and we all hope you come home safely. And I'm gonna find you no matter what. I promise." Her determination has been a driving force in keeping the investigation active. In a significant development, the Michigan State Police took over the investigation, bringing additional resources and expertise to the case. They established a tip line and an online reporting system, encouraging anyone with information to come forward. The Hide and Seek podcast series brought renewed attention to Brittany's case in recent years. Host James Basinger criticized what he perceived as a out-of-sight, out-of-mind approach by the Southwest Michigan community. His in-depth exploration of the case aimed to prompt new leads and keep Brittany's story in the public consciousness. Despite these efforts, as of today, Brittany Nicole Shank remains missing. Her case continues to baffle investigators, with more questions than answers. The night of November 30th, 2018, remains shrouded in mystery, much like the fog that blanketed Sturgis on that fateful evening. As the investigation continues, authorities urge anyone with information about Brittany's disappearance to come forward. The case remains open, with investigators hoping that each new day might bring the breakthrough needed to solve this perplexing mystery and bring closure to Brittany's family. Atlantic City, New Jersey, November 20th, 2006. A grim discovery shocks the seaside resort town. 4 women are found dead in a drainage ditch behind the Golden Key Motel, just off the Black Horse Pike. The victims are positioned face down in a row, each approximately 60 feet apart, all facing east. They are fully clothed except for their shoes and socks. This chilling scene marks the beginning of a case that would come to be known as the Atlantic City serial killings. Among the victims is 35-year-old Kim Raffo. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Kim had moved to Atlantic City in 2003 with her boyfriend. She was a mother of 2, having married young. Despite attempts to turn her life around, including a brief stint living with her husband in Long Island just weeks before her death, Kim struggled with drug addiction and had been working as a sex worker in Atlantic City. The last confirmed sighting of Kim Raffo was in the early morning hours of November 19, 2006. Less than 48 hours later, her body would be discovered alongside 3 other women in that desolate drainage ditch. The discovery of Kim Raffo and the 3 other victims marked the beginning of a complex and haunting case that would perplex investigators for years to come. As detectives began to piece together the victims' final movements, they found themselves delving into the dark underbelly of Atlantic City, a world far removed from the glitz and glamour of its famous casinos and boardwalk. The investigation into the murders of Kim Raffo and the 3 other women quickly intensified. Detectives from the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office and the FBI worked tirelessly to gather evidence and piece together the victims' final hours. Autopsy results revealed that all 4 women had been strangled, confirming suspicions of a serial killer. The lack of defensive wounds suggested the killer may have been someone the victims knew or trusted. Despite the bodies being found in water, forensic experts were able to recover trace evidence, including fibers and DNA samples. Investigators canvassed the area around the Golden Key Motel, interviewing potential witnesses and reviewing security camera footage. They focused on the stretch of the Black Horse Pike, known for prostitution, hoping to find anyone who might have seen the victims in their final days. One lead came from a local restaurant worker who reported seeing Kim Raffo at around 2:30 a.m. on November 19th, just hours before she was believed to have been killed. The witness described Kim having a meal and then being picked up by someone in a vehicle. This sighting became a crucial piece of the timeline, but frustratingly, it did not lead to the identification of a suspect. As the investigation progressed, detectives delved into the backgrounds of each victim. They discovered that all 4 women had struggled with drug addiction and had worked in the sex trade. This common thread led investigators to explore possible connections to drug dealers or regular clients, but no solid suspects emerged. The case took on national prominence, with media outlets across the country reporting on the Eastbound Strangler, a moniker derived from the victims' eastward-facing positions. The intense scrutiny brought both benefits and challenges to the investigation. While it generated numerous tips from the public, it also created pressure on law enforcement to solve the case quickly. Despite the extensive efforts of investigators, including the creation of a task force dedicated to the case, leads began to dry up. The killer had left few traces, and the transient nature of the victims' lifestyles made it difficult to establish a clear pattern or connection to a specific individual. Detectives continued to pursue every possible lead. They interviewed hundreds of potential witnesses, analyzed countless hours of surveillance footage, and followed up on numerous tips from the public. However, the case remained frustratingly elusive. In 2007, on the one-year anniversary of the murders, authorities renewed their appeal to the public for information. They released new details about the case, hoping to jog someone's memory or encourage reluctant witnesses to come forward. Despite these efforts, no significant breakthroughs materialized. Over the years, the case has been revisited multiple times by different investigative teams. In 2015, nearly a decade after the murders, Atlantic City authorities announced they were eyeing more than one person of interest in the case. This development sparked hope, but ultimately did not lead to any arrests. The emergence of new forensic technologies has allowed investigators to re-examine evidence collected from the crime scene. Advanced DNA analysis techniques have been applied to the samples recovered, but as of now, no matches have been found in criminal databases. In 2023, the arrest of Rex Heuermann, in connection with the Long Island serial killer case, briefly reignited interest in the Atlantic City murders. Some speculated about a possible connection due to similarities between the cases. However, police quickly determined that Heuermann was not responsible for the Atlantic City killings, ruling out any link between the two cases. The impact of these unsolved murders continues to resonate in Atlantic City. The case has shed light on the vulnerabilities faced by sex workers and individuals struggling with addiction, leading to increased advocacy for harm reduction programs and support services in the area. For the families of Kim Raffo and the other victims, the lack of closure remains a source of ongoing pain. Hugh Raffo, Kim's husband, has spoken publicly about the toll the unsolved case has taken on him and their children. Despite the passage of time, he continues to hope for answers and justice for Kim. Law enforcement officials maintain that the case remains active. The Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office periodically reviews the evidence and follows up on any new leads that emerge. They continue to urge anyone with information about the murders to come forward, emphasizing that even seemingly insignificant details could be crucial in solving the case. As of October 2024, nearly 18 years after the discovery of the bodies, the case of the Atlantic City serial killings remains unsolved. The identity of the killer, dubbed the Eastbound Strangler, continues to elude investigators. The murders of Kim Raffo and the 3 other women stand as a haunting reminder of a dark chapter in Atlantic City's history, a mystery that continues to challenge law enforcement and haunt the community.